You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Another awesome Tuesday night. So we got the NBA Finals cooking right now. Knicks up 2-1 over the Spurs. We got the NHL Finals. That game 4, just went final not too long ago, and that one's tied up at 2 apiece. So we got competitive championships being played. We have the college baseball World Series set. So we're looking forward to that. And we have a back-to-back champion in the Texas Longhorns for the women's softball World Series. So congratulations to the Lady Horns.
There we go. So yeah, lots of good and interesting stuff playing out there, and some good stuff really kind of starting to come through. We've also got a lot of stuff to cover tonight with right, we're going to be talking tight ends and starting to kind of work our way back through the rankings there and what that may look like from a redraft and tight end fantasy perspective. So definitely some good and fun stuff there. But before we get into that, any news, notes, anything that you want to hit up here?
No, not that I can think of. Unless I don't feel like I missed anything wild and wonderful. Unless you're going to say, hey, what about this goofball? I feel like this was a slower week.
Yeah, it definitely was kind of a slower week, right? The things that that kind of came up there that was interesting, right, was the Brandon Ayuk coming out today talking about the Niners and how they run things and all of that. So that was kind of interesting. You had Justin Jefferson talking about talking up Kyler Murray on a show earlier, and then kind of tweeting out that also or putting out a post that kind of talks about JJ and what that looks like, and trying to, it just kind of read a little funny and kind of came across a little funny with the timeline and how those things kind of came about. But maybe there is something to some of these reports coming out of Minnesota that this QB competition is not as much of a competition as the team would like people to think. So kind of some interesting things there. What else? I also saw something that Dylan Gabriel may actually not have a number to play in this year with Cleveland, right? With the Jared Verse coming over. There were some reports kind of coming through that at a practice, OTA type of thing, that Verse was wearing number 8, which was the same number Dylan Gabriel's wearing, which through all of these other players and all of that, there's not another number between 1 and 19 that a quarterback has to wear that's available if Jared Verse takes number 8 on that one. So very interesting on some of these things, and just kind of some of the silliness that we're starting to see kind of play out around these things.
I always love the stories about the numbers, and the vet comes in and is willing to pay decent money a lot of times, right? Or whatever the price tag is for your jersey number. It just, I don't even know what I would ask for. Like,
right.
Especially if you don't have the massive jersey sales behind it.
Right.
Like, it's not like, Dylan Gabriel's selling a whole bunch of jerseys. So I always wonder what's that like, because the players, if they change their number, are responsible for the remnant jersey sales that the franchises would lose, because those are already bought and paid for. Like, however that works out between the NFLPA and the NFL and the merchandising committees and everything else, like, to change a number for a player who sells a lot of jerseys is a big deal. Like, and maybe it's, you have to be able to sell, you have to sell X amount more, because it's not like they're not loading the sporting good shops up with Dylan Gabriel jerseys. So
Right.
it's probably minute in the landscape of football money.
Right. Yeah. Because apparently Dylan Gabriel's going to move over and wear number 6 because Jeremiah Owusu Kimura is set to miss probably the second consecutive season with the neck injury that he suffered back in 2024. But if that's not the case, right, and the way that the NFL requires quarterbacks to be, wearing number 1 through 19, but not maintaining some of those other kind of strict things with the that we've seen with positionals and the positional type of numbers and what was required in the past. Certainly changes things around there on that one, right? Because of how many times you now see linebackers or cornerbacks or wide receivers and running backs, kind of getting down into those single digits.
Mm-hmm.
So,
skinny numbers on big men.
right. So kind of an interesting thing. That kind of came up there. So, but anyway, the kind of lighter news and notes out there, but those were kind of the things that kind of popped up there. Anything else that you want to hit up here before we start kind of jumping on into the tight end breakdowns?
I'm gonna make note of this because we talk enough football throughout the show that it does kind of transcend over, and we've had a number of different conversations about NIL. And for those who have their head in the sand, there was a judge who is a Texas Tech alum
in Lubbock, Texas.
Decided to file an injunction to basically stop the suspension, the declassification, whatever have you, of Sorsby, the Texas Tech quarterback, who had gotten in trouble for gambling on games and games that he played in. And
multiple stops along the way, allegedly.
Like 40 different games,
right,
through college football or something like that, and a handful that he played in, right?
Yeah, and through different institutions as well, right, is what was all alleged in the in the deal.
So this is cheeky. And so now you have other universities going out and saying, we're just not going to talk to Texas Tech right now. Georgia and Nebraska were the first two that were reported. There are others out there doing the same thing across different sports, even. Like, this isn't just a football thing. This is an institution and universities trying to rise up against some of this NIL stuff and some of the backhandedness, if you will. Look, the kid screwed up, and that's unfortunate, but we need to hold true to some level of standard, right? And whatever that level of standard is right now, the level of standard is, if you're betting on games as a college athlete and it's found out, you're done. And we had this happen a couple of years ago with some NFL players, right? Calvin Ridley was mixed up in that, along with a handful of other players, but Ridley was really the player of note at that point. And he sat out the rest of the season.
Right.
And this is a big deal, and this is backhanded, and it's a shame, right? Like, I don't have within the scope of the rules, I don't have a problem with Texas Tech going out and spending astronomical amounts of money to entice players to come to their university across multiple sports, primarily basketball and softball, of all things. But nevertheless, it's there. Those are the two sports that they have.
Football too. They spend an astronomical on their football team too.
Or sorry, I guess I meant football and softball. Did I say basketball? I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, they spent some money there too, but
yeah. So within the scope of the rules, I get it. I don't like it. I've made the old man get off my lawn pitch about this for a long time. I don't like, but for a sitting judge who's, I guess I don't know that he's a booster, but let's follow the money and let's all guess if this judge is a booster as well. For him to make that injunction so that way his alma mater can have their starting quarterback is shenanigans. It's shenanigans. It'd be like Georgia. It'd be like, here you go. It'd be the University of Georgia having the police commissioner in Athens on their payroll. So that way, every time one of their stupid players decides to go speeding through Athens, because God knows that's Georgia's bugaboo, right? They cannot keep their foot off the gas pedal. Yeah, no, we're good. Like, slap on the wrist. He has to sit the first half against Marshall. Like, so that's what this is. Sorsby suspended for the first 2 games of the season. They play like Ball State and Hail Mary University. Like, I mean, this is a joke. This is a joke, and I hope more universities put some pressure back on Texas Tech and go, you know what? We're going to pull our games, and we're not going to schedule you for anything else. And now you guys are just going to get stuck in purgatory because you can't find a high-quality opponent to be able to get your what is it, the RPI schedule that people look at, your strength of schedule and everything else. You're not going to have anybody who stacks up. So I'm disappointed. I'm really frustrated that's gotten to this point, and we have a bunch of grown ass adults playing games and throwing money at kids. These are kids, right? They are, unless you're Indiana University. These kids are 17 to 22 years old. That's it. Like, and we are throwing enough money at them and having them make decisions that they just are not equipped to make. And this is the remnants of. We get in a situation where real life choices have real life consequences, but not unless the judge is in your pocket. Then he'll bail you out in front of the entire world. Like, what a terrible look for college football right now.
Yeah. Just a couple of notes there. Right on that. Did look up some of that. It does look like the judge that made the ruling did not attend Texas Tech. It looks like he took over for another judge that was originally assigned to the case that was a Lubbock native, and that previous judge had attended Texas Tech
Okay.
for the
My
undergraduate
apologies.
and the law school on that. The current judge looks like he may have gone to UTSA and Houston for the law side of things. But so right, but still still one of those that this is a ruling that took place in the same city county, as Texas Tech University, right? So yeah, there is something to maybe there is some hometown kind of things feeding into that. But we know my stance on baseball, right? Like there's not much that I think baseball, like they've got a lot of things that they need to fix and get right. But one of the things that I think they tend to do better than a lot of the other organizations is when players get caught making bets on games that they play in or that they manage or anything else, like it carries serious consequences. It's not you get a couple of game suspension, or you get even with the NFL on some of these things, they're only, suspended maybe 6 games type of thing, right? Like these are things that go beyond just the simple, oh, I made a wager on a game type of thing, right? Like it's a bad look. And if these guys are really having the addiction side of that, I really hope that they do seek the treatment and kind of work through the program and get that going. But the simple fact of that is that quite frankly, that you went out, you knew something was not permissible, not even remotely in, a gray area. You found a way to try and work around that. You had people that enabled that to happen to then go out and make decisions, that led to this point. So no, I am not in agreement with that at all. I don't know that it's an NIL issue more so than a, more so than the fact that that the
If they
NCAA.
hadn't have signed the kid to a $4.5 million deal to come play quarterback for him,
No, you're probably right on that aspect. I
I
didn't.
don't think you're getting to this level of involvement.
Maybe not. Right? Like we've seen we've seen schools and universities go to bat for players that back when they were just on a scholarship to try and gain the eligibility. But that was, again, back in the day when the NCAA was the, final say, and good luck trying to overcome a ruling on that one, which, the one thing the NIL has done is pretty much rendered the NCAA almost irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, any other thoughts on this one?
No, that probably took too much time, but I just had to complain about it for a second.
Fair enough. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and start heading down the tight end drafting trail. And we're going to go ahead and start with a guy that's a lot of places coming off the board at tight end 32. And we're going to kind of work our way from tight end 32 up to tight end 17 this week. And we're going to go ahead and start with Jake Tongs. And Jake Tongs last year finished tight end 31, 46 targets, 34 receptions, 293 yards, 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on Jake Tongs?
I think Jake Tongs is a great late round flyer. Only because we know Kittle's not going to be ready to start the season. Kittle has come out and said that. And Jake Tongs, when thrust into that starting role as their tight end one for the 49ers, has served very well. So I think this is a great way to, if you're going to be streaming tight ends, like if you're waiting, I think this is a great start because you'll get for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, right? If they end up putting Kittle on the pup list or IR to start the season with designation to return or whatever that is, like, you have that set of games. So now you don't have to stream as hard. Like, so he becomes, someone you're drafting as a late second tight end or even a third tight end if you're getting kind of silly on some things. He's there. I think he's an absolute must-have as a handcuff to George Kittle for this season, just because of how this injury is playing out and how well Jake Tongs has stepped in and shown that he can carry the water for Brock Purdy in that position. And I understand that room's the wide receiver room's been changed up a little bit. That's perfectly fine. The Kyle Shanahan offense is not going to get away from the tight end. They're still an active part of that. So I love Jake Tongs this late. I really do. And like I said, if I'm going to take a flyer on Kittle, okay, fine. But then I'm definitely sure when I get into later rounds, I'm going to be looking at Jake Tongs just to make sure that I have that encapsulated. And then I have the tight end for the 49ers at that point. And then if you got to draft another guy or maybe you pick another one up off the waiver wires later, so be it. So as far as where he finishes, I think that's entirely up to how healthy George Kittle can remain. If Kittle only misses 4 games, then Jake Tongs probably finishes around this area. But again, it's for the weeks that you can use him based off of where you draft him also. So, that format that could feasibly work in best ball and in redraft. I don't know that there's necessarily a huge differentiator other than if it's in best ball and he starts out the season really hot, you're going to get a couple weeks out of a guy that you drafted, with arguably your last pick. And it's cheat points, right? That's kind of how you close the gap and make yourself a little different in that position group. So I like the guy. I think that he has a world of talent as a receiving tight end, and I am going to be taking a real hard look at him in certain leagues where I'm a little bit weaker at tight end and might need that boost. He's going to be one of the first guys I look for.
Right. Yeah, I think there's some good things to be said about Jake Tongs and kind of where he's come off the board, right? And coming off the board at that tight end 32, 200 plus is the average, overall pick on that thing. So you're right. You're throwing a dart throw in the best ball format. Absolutely love that one, because in that kind of range, if a guy can give you 1 week, you paid for his draft capital there, right? And there's a good chance that Jake Tong comes out and delivers 2 or 3 weeks right off the bat to service your team in a best ball format. Same thing with the redraft side of things, right? Like, this is a guy that, last round you can throw the dart, and if you decide to punt the tight end position and go through a streaming tight end, this is a guy that you can do a late round tight end, add him, play him for the first probably 2, 3, 4 weeks, and you move on. And right, and you're looking for the next guy or the next opportunity. You're looking for those guys that have that potential to be that, like Harold Fannin was last year, where he just kind of emerges and you're able to do that and ride that one out the rest of the season, right? Like, there's always those tight ends that emerge through those first couple of weeks that, this guy is going to be a thing here moving on, and we can go through that, right? Gadsden was another guy that was kind of similar to that last year as well, right? So there are tight ends that you can do that, but Jake Tongs is a great way to start your season off without having to really commit to a tight end position, and potentially find that streaming or that waiver wire tight end hero type of thing for your roster over the course of the season. So I like it. And I like the draft capital here, because you're not having to really give up much of anything to add them onto your roster. Anything else on Jake Tongs?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram last year, 76 targets, 50 receptions, 461 yards, 1 touchdown. Thoughts on Evan Ingram?
He kind of got, for a guy that we thought was going to be a potential X factor, or that joker, that wild card position that we talk about with Sean Payton's offense so often, it just really never came to fruition. He had 1 game last year inside the top 12. I don't know if this changes, guys. I mean, especially bringing Waddle in, you still have Franklin, you still have Marvin Mims. Now you have, 4 different running backs. Like, and Evan Ingram is not an expert blocker, right? Like, he is in there to run routes for the most part and catch passes. Part of that could be Bo Nix, right? And where he's looking on the field. Part of it's drops. Like, Evan Ingram did not do a good job putting himself in position to maintain his snap share. And you saw it throughout the season. Like, most games he's only playing, I mean, he flirts with just over 50% in a couple, but a lot of games he's sitting anywhere from 24 to 44% of the snap share. You'd like for that to be a bit higher for a number 1 tight end, but the Broncos kind of throw 3 different guys at the problem, and not that they use them all at the same time, but they just kind of throw it out there, and for whatever set they're running, what Sean Payton's looking at through the defense. Again, if they're going in a run heavy personnel, Evan Ingram's most likely not on the field, and this becomes a situation where the Kyle Shanahan offense, right? We just talked about Jake Tongs. There's one spot in between these guys. Over the course of the season, Evan Ingram might end up with slightly more points than Jake Tongs. Okay, fine. But for where you're drafting him, I would much rather go to Jake Tongs and know that I have 3 games and a guaranteed starter, like a guaranteed large snap count. You're going to see, 6 targets or more starter for 3 games, and then sporadically through the rest of the season, as opposed to Evan Ingram, who sees, who five for 35, 5 for 40. Like that's all you get. You're not getting the touchdowns anymore. He didn't break loose at all last year, really. Like he didn't have one game over 50 yards. One. And that was the week he finished at tight end 8, his 1 week in the top 12. So outside of that, I guess he had a second week.
Yeah, where he scored a touchdown.
So he had a 1 touchdown over the season. That week he was tight end 12, and then 7 weeks later, whatever it was, he finished at tight end 8 when he went 6 of 9 for 79 yards. Other than that, he's not getting the looks. That's not where this offense is designed. It's not the Jimmy Graham, Sean Payton offense. This is more of the Michael Thomas-ish Sean Payton offense. And it's not even that either. It's some kind of hybrid of. So I'm passing. Like I'm not doing it. I bought into Evan Ingram last year. I'm not buying into him this year. I will look Jake Tongs, or I will draft earlier so I don't get put in this situation. But I am passing on Ingram this year.
Yeah. Ingram is pretty much on the do not draft list for me. I got burned by that one last year in quite a few different spots because I really liked where he's coming off the board last year. Really thought that we'd see kind of a breakout really see him well outperform ADP last year, and he way underperformed that. The Broncos GM George Payton came out a while ago and said that he said the team wants to add to Ingram's workload this next year. I'm not buying it. This is a guy that they brought in, paid a big contract to, and didn't even play him 50% of the snaps, right? Like Adam Troutman was out there a ton last year, right? Nate Atkins was out there a ton last year. The Broncos went out and spent a little bit of draft capital on a tight end this past year to bring in Jolly. So wouldn't surprise me if we see this tight end workload split out over 3 or 4 different guys when this thing is all said and done. And I'll be surprised if we see Evan Ingram over 60% snap share when it's all said and done this year. So this is one of those that the couple of years ago, the name would have been super intriguing, but this year it's I'm out and quite frankly on a do not draft list for me. Any other thoughts on Evan Ingram?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at the one of the next guys coming off the board at tight end 30. That's Colby Parkinson. Last year, 56 targets, 43 receptions, 408 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Thoughts on Colby Parkinson?
Parkinson's flashed, and I understand some of the appeal and in the red zone, but they did a large part of that because Tyler Ferguson, is that Tyler Higbee? Sorry, Tyler Higbee was injured. So then they draft Max Clare, the tight end out of Ohio State, and here's a guy that I really thought the Broncos were going to draft until the Rams picked him one spot in front of him. And so here we are. So if you have, it's kind of like the quarterbacks, right? If you have 3, you really don't have 1. We saw this from the Rams last year, kind of changing how this offense looked. A lot of 3 tight end personnel. And yes, it served. We're seeing other NFL teams kind of match that mindset and doing different things with that. But now you have Terrence Ferguson, you have Higbee, you have
Max Clare
and Parkinson. So they have 4 tight ends, and I think all 4 could make the roster unless they cut Higbee. But I would have to look to see what his dead cap hit is. So again, potentially as a late round flyer for best ball, but again, those 8 touchdowns last year, I don't think anybody's gonna be shocked if he only has 3 this year. Like I just don't think that when you have 3 or 4 tight ends that you're rotating through, regardless of what the personnel sets look like, on top of Puka, on top of Devontae Adams, on top of who's the receiver? They brought a receiver in too. And you still have running backs with Kyron and Blake Corum. There's just too many mouths to feed. So I'm not trusting the tight ends. Like the Rams tight end room, no thank you. Any guy that we talk to with the Rams, I'm going to say pass. I am willing to be wrong here.
Yeah, I agree on that thought as well, right? With the Rams, right? This is very similar to the Broncos that we just talked about, except for the Rams managed to have their tight ends find the end zone and really put up points on that one. And that's really where you've got to see Colby Parkinson at, is a touchdown dependent tight end, right? Like we saw the performance, we saw him put up lots of points and weekly finishes throughout the season because he was finding the end zone, right? If that gets reduced down to 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns last year, right? Like he's not a guy that people are even going to have remembered enough to start looking at him at tight end 30 when it's all said and done. So, yeah, this is a muddled type of room that I just don't want any part of. So this one's almost another one of these, do not draft type of situations. And I'm just not wanting any part of that one. Any other thoughts on Colby Parkinson?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and head on over to a guy that's coming off the board in a lot of cases at tight end 29. That's Pat Freiermuth. And Pat Freiermuth last year, 54 targets, 41 receptions, 486 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on Pat Freiermuth?
This is the same type of deal, right? The Pats are another team. They're implementing multiple tight ends. You have Pat Freiermuth, you have Darnell Washington. Like you just too many tight ends in here. And I know that Aaron Rodgers likes to go to those tight end, Lake McRae. I'm not sure he's going to do much, but in theory, Freiermuth should be okay. In theory, because Aaron Rodgers does like to throw it short now. He's not driving the ball down the field. And maybe I'm not thinking enough about the Mike McCarthy offense, right? Like now that I'm slowing myself down here a second. The Mike McCarthy offense can be favorable to tight ends. We know Mike McCarthy really wanted Aaron Rodgers back. That's a big reason he's coming. You're still going to have a lot of running back involvement between Warren, Dowdle, maybe Caleb Johnson gets his legs under him. Eli Hendrick, the kid out of Navy, who I think is going to be a big time sleeper for this season. But I just don't think the volume's there, guys. Like, again, this is not necessarily where I'm looking. If I'm waiting this deep on tight end, like he's not going to be an every week starter. Yes, maybe he flashes for me, but any week I start Pat Freiermuth, I'm not going to have confidence that he's going to get there. So it just leads me to say, nah, I'll pass and I'll find a better streaming option instead of drafting a guy here. Like I think week to week, you will find a stronger option on the waiver wire than drafting Pat Freiermuth and just hoping it works out for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, certainly good points there. This is one that I'm willing to keep an eye on throughout the season, right? Like this is a guy that where he's coming off the board, you really probably don't have to spend any draft capital, but I am going to be taking a look at how the Steelers utilize Pat Freiermuth under this new offense, right? Arthur Smith, we've talked about this in years past as well, but Arthur Smith last year was rotating the tight ends like crazy. We saw the same thing happen down there in Atlanta where Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith were rotating like crazy as well, right? Pat Fryermuth was rotating with the other tight ends and was down there where he only saw about 51% of the snap share this past year. I think that changes this year as well, right? With the Mike McCarthy offense and how I think that they're going to want to bring things in. This is a guy that wouldn't surprise me if we see him be that guy that you can pick up off the waiver wire, potentially be that almost that hero tight end coming down the stretch, right? We've seen Aaron Rodgers go through and support a tight end to the point where finish, tight end number 2 overall back a few years ago with Robert Tonyan back in Green Bay. So this is a deal where the pieces are there for the potential to have a season to outperform and be of value where he's coming off the board. I say all of that to say that I'm still not confident that I'm going to be pulling the trigger with Pat Fryermuth on draft night, but this is one that I've got enough intrigue going with this one that I'm going to keep an eye on it and potentially look to add him to the waiver wire a week or two into the season. So, any other thoughts on Pat Fryermuth?
No, I like that idea. It'll be a wait and see approach.
Okay. Let's go ahead and head on over to the next guy on the list, and that is Cade Otton. Cade Otton last year, 81 targets, 59 receptions, 571 yards, and 1 touchdown. Thoughts on Cade Otton?
I think this is what Cade Otton is. Like, I don't think we're going to see some magical change in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, even with the Mike Evans departure. Baker will use Otton when needed, and he will see, he'll see targets and have some catches each and every week, but those catches don't result to touchdowns. And really, for this tight end position, you need touchdowns for it to be a difference maker. The 3 for 25 or 4 for 30 or whatever, it just doesn't cut the mustard when you're trying to get an edge in fantasy scoring. So nothing against Cade Otton. He will see plenty of opportunities. He's a very, very, very safe pick, has a pretty safe floor, if you will, in knowing what you're going to get, but his ceiling is very capped. And he just does not provide any oomph or breakout potential for me. So in a lot of cases, I think he's a guy that, you could pick up off the waiver wire if you really need him for a week. Maybe if an injury creeps up, he gets a little bit more involved. Kind of like the 24 season, Derek, or the 23 season that he was able to. Hold on, I'm looking now.
24 was his best fantasy.
The 24 season, and again, 4 touchdowns, right? 2, 4, 4, 1. That's kind of how he's gone. So, I don't think much changes. Maybe he gets an extra touchdown. He might get to 2 or 3 this year. I think that's plausible. That he hits kind of right there in his average. So it's not just going to be 1, but his career high in yards is 600. His career high in receptions is 59, which he's done each of the last 2 seasons. It's adequate, but it's not super sexy, and that's why he kind of bounces on and off the waiver wire.
Right. Like, this is a guy that's going to be very much in a tight back end, tight end 2, tight end 3 type of range, week in, week out. Interestingly enough, right, that season in 24 where he had his best finish, right, was the numbers weren't that dissimilar except for touchdowns in this past year, right? 87 receptions or 87 targets versus 81 targets, 59 receptions versus 59 receptions, 600 yards versus 572, right? Like, all of those numbers are pretty similar to themselves, but the difference of 4 touchdowns versus 1 touchdowns was a difference that would, for this tight end position, equates to about 10, 12 spots in a lot of cases for an overall season finish. So this is one of those that Cade Otton's a guy that from that I'm not going to be adding on my rosters through the draft, but the guy that I don't necessarily mind keeping an eye on, and keeping an eye on the injury room or the wide receiver room and the injury bug that's kind of bitten Tampa over the last few years. because that's where we've seen Cade Otton have kind of bigger games is when it's him and one other wide receiver out there for Baker to throw to. And that's where we tend to see Cade have flourished a little bit there. So not a guy that I'm going to be drafting, but a guy that maybe worth keeping an eye on for a potential pickup and stream in a pinch type of situation. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over to our next tight end here. And that's a guy coming off the board in a lot of cases, tight end 27, and that is Gunnar Helm. And Gunnar Helm last year, 55 targets, 44 receptions, 357 yards, 2 touchdowns. Thoughts on Gunnar Helm?
I think there's room for growth for Gunnar Helm as again, you have to find something with this Tennessee offense, right? It was not very good last year. Cam Ward definitely had some growing pains as a rookie quarterback. But they're brought in Carnell Tate and Wan'Dale Robinson to help the passing game a little bit. And I think that probably helps Gunnar Helm potentially spread the field a little bit. So I'm not saying that he's going to break out and bust onto the scene as kind of a top 15 tight end, but I think we could see him potentially creep up just a little bit and see him, maybe sitting around, 20, 21, 22 by the time the season's done with. So I think there's a little bit of upside here, but it's the touchdowns. Like he had 2 last year. Tight ends for touchdowns, touchdowns for tight ends, excuse me, are even harder to predict than wide receivers. So, I mean, if he can get to 4 or 5, I think that's a massive upgrade, and that's really where it's going to come from. 400, but I mean, if he finishes with 460 yards, you're pretty happy with that, right? Like it's just a matter of how much Cam Ward's going to look his way, or if he's going to spend more time trying to drive the ball down the field to Carnell Tate and then working underneath with Wan'Dale Robinson instead of Gunnar Helm. So that might be the one downside is Wan'Dale and Gunnar could be fighting for some of that possession receiver type work, even though they're playing different positions.
No, makes sense, right? This particular guy is one that does have a little bit of intrigue for me, but this is also a deal where Gunnar Helm's going to go as far as Cam Ward can take him on this one, right? This was a bad Tennessee offense last year. We're going to see how much they're able to have improved on this one. So if Cam Ward can make some big strides in season 2, then Gunnar Helm is very interesting, right? Like, potential to see him maybe get up to that 500 to 600 yards, a handful of touchdowns. But if this is a very similar Tennessee offense that struggles, you're probably looking 300 yards and maybe 2 touchdowns, right? Like there's a very big range of outcome on this one. I don't know that we're going to necessarily see those strides taken to the point where we can see him really kind of break out and maybe be that viable option here for that streaming tight end, waiver wire tight end hero type of play that you would love to see in this kind of range. But it's intriguing enough to keep an eye on, but I'm not actively spending a draft pick on this one. Any other thoughts on Gunnar Helm?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at a guy coming off the board at tight end 26, and that's Eli Stowers. And Eli Stowers, rookie coming in. Thoughts on Eli Stowers?
I don't know, man. I think that he's going to play a part in this offense, but I'm not sure maybe I'm not sold by how much he's going to play a part in this offense. Again, it's a team that has Saquon Barkley for a lot of this underneath stuff. You have Dallas Goedert coming back. That took a team deal, so he's the second guy on this. And not that the Eagles run a decent amount of 2 tight end sets. Maybe we see more since AJ Brown is gone, because they have to have pass catchers. But to expect more than this out of a rookie that didn't have all the hype in the world, like he was a good tight end, but he was not world renowned like we saw the hype of a Kyle Pitts or a Brock Bowers coming out. Is a potential to catch the world by storm. Maybe a little bit, but I would tell you overall, I'm going to be passing on Eli. I want more of a proven commodity, especially if I'm going to be putting my eggs into a basket of such as the Eagles, right? Like I would rather go ahead and draft Devonta Smith or grab Saquon if you want Saquon or something like that, and get the offensive points that are going to be there instead of stretching for a player on a Philadelphia offense that was very up and down last year, right? Like they'd get going for a little bit and then they'd fall off a cliff, and then they just kind of seem to lose all their mojo. So buyer beware is how I'm going to phrase this. And I think I'm going to be aware enough to, if I miss in his rookie year, so be it.
Yeah, this is a hard pass for me. The Dallas Goedert is the point where I'm almost a hard pass on that one, and have been on years past, right? This is a deal where we really just don't see the Eagles feature the tight end. Granted, we have yet another new offensive coordinator coming in. But we haven't seen Jalen Hurts really throw the ball around enough to the point where it makes sense to really focus in on a tight end coming out of the Philadelphia offense, much less the tight end number 2 coming off the offense. This is also a deal too where Eli Stowers is not necessarily a guy known for his blocking ability, and is a receiving type of tight end. So for him to come in and be the tight end 2 behind Dallas Goedert, it is going to be a deal where even at that, he's still limited and capped on that, to the point where, does he even see the field for 50% of the passing downs type of thing. I think that's a hard thing to kind of build in and go around. But yeah, this one here is just a straight up hard pass for me. I want no part of the Eli Stowers experiment for this year. Any other thoughts on Eli Stowers? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to David Njoku. And David Njoku, heading out west, signed a deal with the Chargers this offseason. Last year, 48 targets, 33 receptions, 293 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on David Njoku? That's one.
I think this could be kind of one of those sneaky plays. I could see that the Chargers get really heavy personnel and being able to play him and Rondé Gadsden a lot together. Gadsden's a receiver convert. Njoku is a really good blocker. That was part of the reason why he had a slow start to his fantasy relevant career, is Cleveland kind of kept him in line for the first 5 years of his career before we really started understanding who this guy was as a pass catcher. So I think that John Harbaugh is going to like him a lot, and we're going to see him at least on the field. So if you're waiting on tight end, I think you could do worse than this. I like the offensive makeup of the Chargers this year. They've put a lot of work in building depth around the offensive line. They're getting both their tackles back, and Justin Herbert has a live arm. He just does. He plays gritty. He plays tough. So I think that there's an opportunity here that you could see Njoku potentially creep up to just inside the top 20. Obviously touchdowns dependent, but he's shown that if he's going to be able to be blocking and he's going to be in there a lot on first and second down, The NFL passes on first and second down a lot of times these days, right? It's not just 3 yards in a cloud of dust and you only pass on third. So um, I think that there's some potential upside here and being able to create mismatches for the Chargers that they haven't been able to in years past, with only really having one dominant tight end, and then you're just spreading everybody out wide.
Right. I would agree. I do like Njoku this year, right? Like this is a deal that over the last couple of seasons, right? He's been banged up a little bit. He's missed a lot of time due to injuries in both 24 and 25, right? Missed 11 games between those two seasons. However, when he's on the field, he's worth keeping an eye on, right? And this is a deal that even in that Cleveland quarterback room that we saw transpire last year, we still saw David Njoku put up some decent performances when he's out there. And I think you're right. I think his blocking ability will allow him onto the field more so. And wouldn't surprise me that we see him do some big things. This is one of those that in drafts I would actually be targeting David Njoku more so than I would Oronde Gadsden, especially kind of where they're coming off the board and the draft capital that I'm having to spend there. David Njoku is a guy that I'm willing to take as a late round super deep tight end flyer, and something that a guy that I think could be very interesting when it's all said and done here. Another guy that, maybe not necessarily spending the draft pick on, because you don't have to necessarily spend the draft pick unless you're in a super deep league. But this is a guy that I'm absolutely keeping an eye on through week 1, week 2, and see what that looks like, and what his role is going to be in this Chargers offense moving forward. So any other thoughts on David Njoku?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and move on over to a guy coming off the board at tight end 24, AJ Barner. Last year, AJ Barner, 68 targets, 52 receptions, 519 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Thoughts on AJ Barner?
The efficiency for Barner is really what sticks out to me. You don't see a whole lot of sub 70 targets and over 50 reception players in receiver, tight end, whatever. So I do like the efficiency there. I like that they got him involved in the running game a little bit. He had 10 attempts and a touchdown running the ball here. So he's got enough speed that the Seahawks felt like they could, put a little wrinkle in and let him run the ball. So that's always good. Again, touchdowns are hard to predict, especially for tight ends, but the Seahawks outside of JSN are not otherworldly as far as their dynamics go, right? Cooper Kupp is aging. You have Rashid Shaheed there now to kind of take the top off and return kicks. Troy Horton was a guy who made a little bit of noise there last year, and then he kind of got dinged up and fell off to the side after a decent hot start. But none of these names outside of JSN are striking fear. So there's a path for AJ Barner. I think he's a really solid back end tight end too. Again, he's going to have some pop weeks, but he will see consistent targets week in and week out to where you can at least feel like you have a safe enough floor that you're able to plug and play and you're hoping for a touchdown. And he's not going to get you a 0. And ultimately that's really what's important, is you don't want to take the 0. So AJ Barner is a guy that I'm at least willing to take a look at, especially if I'm waiting on tight end or if I need a secondary tight end, a guy that I feel like I can plug in there. And again, eat up some points to where I'm not just goose egging the position if I don't like what's streaming.
Yeah, no, I do like that thought. I'm really liking AJ Barner's potential this year, right? Like I think that there's a world where he is an absolute steal at this draft capital, where he's coming off the board at tight end 24. This is a guy that wouldn't surprise me if we could see him sneak up into fringe tight end 1 territory when it's all said and done, right? Like, wouldn't surprise me at the end of the season if we see him finish anywhere from tight end 11 to 14. I do think that there's a lot of potential for him to drastically outperform this draft capital. And a lot of that has to do with the Seattle offense, right? Like, Seattle really didn't add any other pass catchers through the offseason, right? Jackson Smith-Njigba is commanding 30+% of the target share. Like, it's just insane, right? One of those that I don't know that we're going to continue to see the Seahawks be able to continue to target him at that rate. Just due to how some of these other teams are gonna have to switch up coverages, do things like that, and you'll probably start seeing a lot more bracket coverage, start seeing some things there to the point where they have to look other ways. And AJ Barner can absolutely be a guy that can benefit from that additional coverage being floated over the top of JSN. Not going to surprise me if we look up at the end of the season and we see AJ Barner around that probably 60 receptions, 600 yards, and see if we can still see him get 6-7 touchdowns. Like, this is a guy that I think will drastically outperform his ADP. So I'm really liking the draft capital at this point. Any other thoughts on AJ Barner?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over to Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz last year, 106 targets, 82 receptions, 777 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Dalton Schultz?
I feel like the Texans need Schultz to be good just for some stability on offense. Now, a lot of offensive line woes has created situations where maybe Schultz isn't used as a receiver as much, but still finished tied at 12 last year, right, in half-point PPR. So, there is a possibility there. Can he replicate? It's going to be tough. I think between Noel and Higgins, we expect one of the two of them to take a step forward to help out Nico Collins. They're also getting Tank Dell back, so we'll see what he looks like as he's working his way back from being out all of last year. Their offensive line should be slightly better, and their running back situation with David Montgomery is absolutely better. As far as having that last year as opposed to Woody Marks and kind of whoever else they threw in because of the Joe Mixon injury and him not being able to play. So
right, and the ghost of Nick Chubb.
Yes, and Nick Chubb. That's absolutely right. So again, with Dalton Schultz last year, it's a pretty safe floor, right? The guy had a decent amount of targets last year. He's averaging almost 6 targets a game. So I think that there's absolutely a potential there, and you don't have a ton of tight ends seeing 100+ targets. That might be harder to get to if the Texans can stay healthy offensively, right? I'm not saying that CJ Stroud's going to return to his rookie year form. He's going to have to show us that after falling so far down the ladder of grace in the fantasy community. But I think he's still a player that you could see with 95 targets. I think he's going to be just shy of something like that, and 3 touchdowns seems about right. So that would put him in the fringe tight end 1, tight end 2 type category, right? Somewhere above. So that means there's value in this. And ultimately, he's a guy that as a second tight end off the board, he's a very nice complementary piece. Not a ton of upside because he doesn't have the burst to break away from anybody, but he's on the field a ton and he sees a lot of targets. So there is a good floor to have there to where, again, injury, bye week, whatever you're trying to fight through, it's not a zero. That you're going to get something out of him.
Yeah. I like him from that standpoint that, right, like he does manage to just get points put on the board. I don't know that we're going to be able to see him produce like we did this past year, right? The 100 plus targets is tough to duplicate in this one, especially with the fact that Houston's defense is one of the best defenses out there in the league, and we would anticipate them being good again coming in, to the point where Houston may not be looking to huck the ball that much, right? And this may be a little bit more of a ground and pound, control the clock, play behind a very, very strong defense, and allow them to just kind of manage and win games that way. Plus all the receivers that you just mentioned as well. So this is one of those, I think we do see a pretty good dip in some of the targets going his way. But still, at the end of the day, I think that this is a receiver that we can probably, or a tight end that we can probably still see between 50 and 60 receptions. And, maybe around 550 to 600 yards through the air, and still probably about 2 to 3 touchdowns. So I think that we do see him have some regression from last year. But this is still one that, even with the regression, I think that there's still value for where he's coming off the board. And I don't mind taking him as a late round tight end, keep an eye on as a potential streamer type of tight end for my fantasy rosters. Any other thoughts on Dalton Schultz?
Not tonight.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look into TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson last year, 66 targets, 51 receptions, 438 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on TJ Hawkinson?
Hawkins is a guy that I don't know that I'm buying into necessarily. And that's regardless of Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy. I feel like the Vikings are using him as a complementary piece more than a centerpiece these days. He still lacks some of the burst that he had before he blew out his knee at the end of in the 2023 season. Now he's a red zone target, right? He's a big bodied guy. He knows how to stay on the field when healthy because he's a willing blocker. So he has all the pieces and has at least the football acumen that we've seen to finish inside the top 5 at tight end. I just don't know if his body's going to physically let him do that. And with the 3-headed kind of receiving monster that the Vikings have with Jefferson, Addison, and Juwan Jennings, I just don't know that there's that much room for TJ Hawkinson. So he's a guy that, maybe I'll take a shot at here in a couple different places, but I don't think he's a guy that he's not a must-have, right? If I'm waiting on tight end a little bit, he's not a must-have guy. If I'm waiting back on tight end, there is some sneaky upside there because we have seen him do such great things. But again, with the lack of separation, and there's more weapons in Minnesota now than there's been kind of in a long time, at least on paper. Hawkinson is almost the odd man out here because Aaron Jones is a receiving back as well. Yes, he runs outside very well. He doesn't run inside tremendously well, but he does get outside and catches the ball well. And then you have 3 really solid receivers, one being Jefferson, who's a all-pro caliber receiver, just didn't have a great year last year. So not everyone's going to get fed, and I'm going to say Hawkinson's going to end up being the odd man out.
Yeah, this is one of those that the name will trap some people, I think, this year, right? Because of past performances, things like that. But this is not one that I'm looking to really add into my rosters, right? Typically, when guys, kind of tear up a knee and go through the ACL type of surgery and repair on that, it's usually about 2 years that we see them start to perform, and even approaching that 2-year mark, it really didn't look that different last year, right? Like looks like he may have lost a step kind of coming through that, but he's got a lot of targets to compete with on the receiving core. The one thing that you could potentially try and bolster this thing up and say, hey, this might be looking at, is the fact that Kyler Murray I do think that Kyler Murray will be the center under the quarterback under center for the Vikings this year. And we just saw the work that he's done with Trey McBride over the last 2 years, right? But Trey McBride is, TJ Hawkinson's not at that level that Trey McBride is, right? Especially after that injury. So I don't know that we're going to see this turn around. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are considering him a steal where he's coming off the board. Consider him being a fringe tight end one, getting up there. I don't see it, and I'm not looking to try and add that to my roster. I think that this is one of those that what you see is what you get, and where he's coming off the board at that tight end 22. There's other guys that I'd rather take in and around that, especially if I'm looking to try and throw a dart or I'm trying to look for upside. There are other guys that I'd rather take that shot with. Any other thoughts on TJ Hawkinson? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Brenton Strange. And Brenton Strange last year, 60 targets, 46 receptions, 540 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Brenton Strange? That's 2.
I was saying that I like Brenton Strange. Even with missing 5 games last year, I feel like his numbers are extremely respectable. Again, another guy saw 3 touchdowns after he came back last year, and pretty consistently saw about 6 to 7 targets a game. So a lot of mouths to feed in Jacksonville, yes, but we have seen that Trevor Lawrence does not forget about the tight end. So Strange is still going to get his opportunities. Not a super high ceiling type guy, but for a waiting on tight end and grabbing someone in that tight end 2 round, I think Brenton Strange is a very strong tight end 2 candidate. He is going to provide you with some weeks inside the top 12. And he's got just enough burst to be able to get some of that extra yardage after the catch. So he's not just going to catch and get hit type player. It's just a matter of how much volume Jacksonville is going to be putting into their passing game, or are they going to kind of take a step back and yes, they have all these offensive pieces, but while everyone's worried about the passing game, now we're going to try and run it a bit more. I don't see that happening necessarily, but it's always a possibility that's out there. So I like Strange. Again, he's a guy that I'm willing to keep a real close eye on and potentially even target if I'm waiting on tight end. And we're just I guess we're gonna see how this Jacksonville team looks, because I have a lot of high hopes in Trevor Lawrence and what he's going to do. And so if Trevor Lawrence is having a really strong year, chances are Strange should be a value here.
Yeah, very well could be, right? This is a deal where, right, he'll be a serviceable tight end, right? I don't think that there's enough kind of flash and upside and a high enough ceiling that you're going to see a breakout here. But this is a guy that's probably going to return mid tight end 2 type of value for you. The one thing that does slightly concern me is Jacksonville went out and spent some draft capital on tight ends, including taking a tight end in the 2nd round this year, as well as the 5th round this year. And, with the fact that them bringing in, 2 rookies and drafting that like they did, wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing Jacksonville run a couple of more tight end sets there and potentially see Brenton Strange not on the field as much, or see a decrease in some of that snap share. Right, like last year when he was in and playing, routinely saw that 80% mark in snap share. So if he dwindles down and is closer to 60 or 70%, that could impact pretty significantly what we see him be able to do from an on-field production standpoint. So this is one of those that I am a little leery of this one. I think that he's a very serviceable streaming type of option, potential tight end type of deal, bye week fill in, all of that. And I like his potential for that, but some of these other pieces give me enough pause that I'm willing to keep an eye on this one, but not necessarily willing to spend draft capital on Bretton Strange. Any other thoughts on Bretton Strange?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next guy coming off the board, and that is Chigio Karanko, who's now in Washington. Chiggy last year, 79 targets, 56 receptions, 560 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Thoughts on Chiggy?
Washington has to throw the ball to somebody.
Right?
Like, I don't love the way this Washington offense is set up. I really don't. Like, yes, you have Terry McLaurin, but I'm not necessarily sold with anything that you have behind him. Now, I think Chiggy's going to see plenty of opportunity on the field. So it is possible because, again, after Terry McLaurin, Antonio Williams, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Treylon Burks, Dami Brown, like no one here scares you besides F1. So I think he's going to see a solid amount of targets here just because of lack of pass catchers in Washington. I think they're going to struggle again this year. So trailing, okay, good. Like, get him out and maybe he's able to catch a few more. You're trying to spread some teams out, catch them on surprise. So I think Chiggy's a guy that I'm going to take a flyer on in certain spots, and I don't have any shame in doing that because I think the sheer volume and the quality of passer that Jaden Daniels is when healthy is going to be the best that Chiggy's played with in his career thus far. So, I see him sneak, inside tight end 20 and hope for the best there. So a little bit of value, maybe not a ton, but again, if he's reliable and he stays healthy, maybe he sneaks in and gets 5 or 6 touchdowns. And there's a big difference between getting 4 and 6 in that tight end position. It does leaps and bounds in the scoring differential here. So there's a path. I appreciate knowing that there's a path that makes things easier when looking at these players, but otherworldly, no, he's not going to finish inside the top 10. I don't see a world in where that happens, but I think he can be really reliable, mid to upper tight end 2 most weeks.
Right. Yeah, this is a guy that holds a lot of intrigue for me this year, right? From a standpoint that unfortunately we haven't really seen the breakout happen yet, right? For those years in Tennessee. This is a guy that kind of has perpetually been in that that kind of mid tight end 2 range, right? But there is a lot of intrigue around this one from the standpoint that there is a lot of unknowns on who's going to be the second leading target getter on this Washington offense. Do I think it's going to be Chiggy? There's a potential for it, and if there's a potential, that there is the potential for a lot of volume and a lot of fantasy points being put up, right, to the point where he could have a breakout season and be a guy that potentially can get up there into a potential top 5, right? Like, there is a path for that at the tight end position. Do I think that's likely to happen? No, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is a guy that can sneak up there and be fringe tight end 1, right? Like, this is a team that utilized Zach Ertz really well over the last couple of years, to the point where Zach Ertz was that set it and forget it 4 for 40 tight end. That was just that's what he was going to get you, was 4 for 40. And I think that, right, Chiggy has a lot more pop and a lot more athleticism at this point in his career than what Zach Ertz still had in the tank. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they can utilize him with this Washington offense. So I do like the value coming off the board here with Chiggy, and a guy that I'm willing to take a dart throw on late. So, any other thoughts on Chiggy?
No, I think you and I pretty well agree on possibilities here.
All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and take a look over at. As soon as things decide to work for me here, let's go ahead and take a look at the guy coming off the board, tight end 19, Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry last year, 87 targets, 60 receptions, 768 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Thoughts on Hunter Henry?
Um, so I like Hunter Henry. I think he's a guy that Drake May does trust. And I know that they brought in Romeo Dobbs and AJ Brown, but at the end of the day, they had Stephon Diggs and some other guys there last year. And I'm not saying that they didn't upgrade the wide receiver room. I'm just saying that Hunter Henry was the constant, and I could see him staying that way. Um, just as far as the Patriots' schedule is going to be a bit harder. Coverage on these wide receivers is probably going to be more difficult because you're playing better teams. So not that Drake May has checked down Charlie for any stretch. I know he likes to air it out and kind of stretch that field, but he did a good job not turning the ball over, and that was because he was making decisions. And look, we're going to take the easy completion and live to fight another down. So if Drake May is able to keep that mentality, Hunter Henry has some legs, right? He has weeks where he can be a true tight end one for you, and he's got a pretty safe floor for the most part. The touchdowns help, right? When you're getting, what was it, seven touchdowns? That's a big number for a tight end. But I think with how this Patriots offense is kind of formulated, I think we could see him be in that 5 to 7 range again. So maybe not as much value as you could get further down the draft board with some potential of landing at the same spot. Chiggy, the guy we just talked about, probably has a bit more upside. But with what we know of Hunter Henry, I'd tell you he has a safer floor. So part of it's just going to be what you feel like you can stomach.
Right. This is one that I'm willing to take the shot on this one because I do think that there is some good upside here, right? The chemistry between Drake May and Hunter Henry is real, right? Like this is one of those that don't discount the chemistry and these between these guys here, right? This is one that Hunter Henry 2 years ago, tight end 12. This past year, tight end 7 when it's all said and done. So there's there's value here for where he's being drafted. One of those that I think that we'll still see Hunter Henry still probably get 60 to 70 receptions, around 700 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Like that is good enough to put him inside a top 12 tight end. Is it going to be super pretty week in, week out? No. But is he going to lay a goose egg for you? No. Can he go out there and win a week for you at the tight end position? Yes. So there are lots of things here that not really a guy that I want as set it and forget it type of tight end, but this is a guy that I'm willing to take a shot on as a tight end too, as a streaming type of candidate, all of those things, because Hunter Henry does put together those stretches that turn into really good fantasy performances and weeks for you. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him run it back a third season here with Drake May and see him to continue to improve upon that. So this is a guy that I do like where he's coming off the board, and I do think there's some really good value here. Any other thoughts on Hunter Henry?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at tight end coming off the board at QB 18, and that is Juwan Johnson. Last year, Juwan Johnson, 102 targets, 77 receptions, 889 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Juwan Johnson?
I feel like these numbers are repeatable for Juwan Johnson. And with Tyler Shook there at quarterback and what we know about Kellen Moore and the way he runs an offense, like the tight end does stay viable. So I like Juwan Johnson here. I think there's upside for him to be even a fringe tight end 1 caliber again for this season. So he's a guy that, only had 3 touchdowns last year, but did see, a good number of targets and catches, he was consistent as far as his catch rate was very consistent, right? So he didn't let a lot get through his fingers. So you can appreciate, everybody has to appreciate that, especially at the tight end position. So he's a guy that I like. They use him in line and offline, so he will stay on the field for a lot of passing work. Early on in the season, they used him a ton. He was on the field for 90+% of the snaps for the first quarter of the season, and then it backed down a little bit. But when he was healthy and wasn't, a couple games he was nicked up, he was on the field for over 65% of the snaps, close to 70 even. So opportunity is a great thing, and Juwan Johnson is going to see plenty of opportunity for a New Orleans team that we don't expect to be very good. So that means they have to continue to air the ball out to stay in games. Chris Olave had a great season last year, and Johnson was still able to finish tight end 10 on top of that. So I think, like I said, these numbers that he put together are extremely repeatable, and maybe we get lucky and he squeezes a couple more into the end zone and makes up for any lack of receptions or yardage that there might be just by grabbing 1 or 2 extra touchdowns.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those that I'm having a hard time making up my mind on what I want to do with Juwan Johnson and where he's going to kind of fall for me in these in the draft side of things, right? From one standpoint, right, we saw the production and we saw the on the field use. We've seen a lot of really good things from Juwan Johnson, right? He is coming off of a career year. 100 targets means he's very involved in that offense. But this is an offense that also just went through and added a day 2 tight end to the roster, right? With Oscar Delp coming in, went out and added Noah Fant through free agency, went out and added a first round wide receiver in Jordan Tyson, went out and acquired Travis Etienne. So like this offense is going to shake up quite a bit from what we've seen in the past. And we're going to see a different dynamic really play out here to it. With that different dynamic, that does leave me a little concerned with Juwan Johnson, because part of the reason that we saw this performance last year was it was Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson and nobody else when it came to the Saints. They have added other weapons and other pieces along the way that does concern me, to the point where I don't know that he's a guy that we would have seen having the type of season that he did, and we're talking about him as a a mid tight end 2 kind of coming off the board. That being said, I think that this is one of those that I think there may be a little bit of value on this one, but it wouldn't ultimately surprise me to see him kind of finish right about where you draft him, maybe finish up a couple of spots higher and maybe kind of sneak into top 15 for the season. But I don't know that this is a guy that we're going to be able to reasonably rely on him getting to a top 12 tight end on just volume this season. I don't see that one happening. So that does put a little bit of leeriness there for me. Any other thoughts on Juwan Johnson?
No.
All righty. Let's go ahead and we'll hit up the last guy of the night, and that is Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq, the rookie coming in to the Jets, who drafted him with their first round with a first round pick. Thoughts on Kenyon Sadiq?
Passing here. Like, I think a lot of these guys that we just talked about, I would rather have a flyer on than Kenyon Sadiq. I don't trust the quarterback situation. I don't trust the offensive, philosophy in New York. Mason Taylor's still there, a guy that they drafted just last year with high-end draft capital. So he's not going to go away necessarily. So he brought in Cooper, gave Brees Hall a big contract. Like, I'm just not seeing how he fits in and is ranked this high, other than just being the flashy new name. So, all the talent in the world, a really crummy landing spot for fantasy. So for this year, I'm going to make it simple and I'm going to say pass. Like any of the last 3 or 4 guys that we talked about, I would be drafting over Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't understand this coming off the board at tight end 16. Or I'm sorry, tight end 17. It does not make any sense to me. I get that they drafted him with the first pick, and we've traditionally seen in the last couple of years a tight end break out and have a really good um, season finish from a tight end perspective, right? Like guys getting up into the top 5 tight end as a rookie on that, right? Like last year we saw Tyler Warren do it. We saw Harold Fannin do it. Tight end 5 and 6. The year prior to that, you had Brock Bowers finished at number 1 in the position. The year before that, you had Sam Laporta finish number 1 at the position. So there's a trend of these tight ends coming in and being able to do really well and perform at this level on that and return some really good value. I don't think Kenyon Sadiq's the guy to do it this year. I don't think that he's gonna right. Like the talent is there, and there's lots of really good things that I can say about him from a talent perspective. But the Jets fit. No, thank you. Um, I think that the Jets are very much in kind of a disarray, and we're going to see a lot of changes made again at the end of the season over in New York. But this is a guy that wouldn't surprise me if Kenyon Sadiq is the fifth most targeted, sixth most targeted guy on his own team. And that team being the Jets, I want zero part of that one. I will pass and gladly take shots on Juwan Johnson, on Chiggy, on Hunter Henry, on Brenton Strange, on Dalton Schultz, on AJ Barner. All of these guys, I think I would take over Kenyon Sadiq. This one is a hard pass for me on where he's coming off the board. Any other thoughts on Kenyon Sadiq?
No sign. I think you and I are in lockstep here.
Yeah, like I get it. The talent is there. I don't understand the draft capital. And we'll have lots of people talking through those Friday night shows, I'm sure, as to why isn't he performing? Come week 4 or 5. So anyway, but yeah, that's gonna take us down here to the end of it for tight end rankings. Any other thoughts or any final thoughts that you want to hit up here?
Some interesting guys that didn't make the cut, and not to give too much away because obviously we have a show next week, but we there were a couple guys that were not here. Greg Dulcich is one, and I know that he hasn't lit the world on fire, but again, Miami has to throw the ball to somebody. Like how Eli Stowers makes this list, but Kenyon Sadiq doesn't, or not Kenyon Sadiq. Good Lord, Greg Dulcich doesn't. Right? Same thing. Parkinson, I know, had the big run at the end of last year, but again, Dulcich has that opportunity. I think so many teams so Kenyon Sadiq, going back to him, tight end 17, right? Mason Taylor, tight end 39 roughly is coming off this list here. There's not that much of a gap, guys. There's not. If you are so set in your life that you want a New York Jet tight end, Mason Taylor's the play because you can get him for peanuts.
Right.
And maybe even just peanut shells. You don't actually have to have the nut in the casing. It's just so that's little things like that. Gesicki's another one in Cincinnati. We've seen him kind of be on and off a little bit, but I think he's worthy of probably being in the top 32 in a high-powered offense like Cincinnati that's going to throw the ball a ton. Just the sheer passing volume should make him relevant. And all three of these guys are well below or at least missed the top 32 list. So it's not a perfect list, right? Those three guys in particular probably deserve to be talked about a little bit. And so come draft season, we might see this board shake up a little bit. Maybe we end up talking about these guys more then than we have tonight with them falling short of the top 32. But definitely some names to be aware of that are in some for one reason or another in a situation to outperform where they're being drafted today.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this thing ultimately plays out. But you're right. There's some of these guys that we talked about tonight that I little bit of a head scratcher as to what's driving up the ADP at this point. But we'll see, and we'll see as these things continue to play out here and draw closer to the season that where that ends up playing and where we see things ultimately land. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, thanks for tuning in. Right, enjoy the NBA and NHL finals. Enjoy the start of the College World Series if that's what you're doing. Obviously, there's F1 coming up. My boss is taking his daughter, like they're big F1 fans. They're flying out to Barcelona tomorrow to go to the F1 race this weekend. So that's cool for them. But yeah, plenty of stuff on television if you're not spending time outside and enjoying the nice weather, the pre-summer weather here in June for most of the country. So, but yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us tonight. Again, appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button wherever you're listening to this. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloo.